We can still save Earth. People are sure to clean up their act when presented with cold, hard facts by rational folks like us. The end is near. Repent thy sins.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion. Did you know that we have under a week to live? Well, that is according to this one Christian numerologist called David Mead. According to his calculations, the world is supposed to end on September 23rd, 2017. So kiss your kids goodbye, folks. So David Mead is claiming that this is a biblical prophecy, that you can look towards the Bible in order to see everything that's been happening recently in the States and over the world, and how this will lead to the end of the world on September 23rd. Drop it. Yes, it gives me great pleasure to introduce us to our first official episode of Hitch Slap. I used it in a segment in one of my episodes, and I really liked it, so I'm glad I can bring it back. The point of the Hitch Slap segment is to, just as Christopher Hitchens did in life, the point is to point out ludicrous religious ideas and to rebuke them. So, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the first episode of Hitch Slap. And I love how an end times prophecy is the first thing we're going to cover on this. It's almost too easy, really. So if you've been paying attention recently, you've probably been seeing all these headlines for the end of the world. Nibiru is coming. You have till September 23rd to live. We've all heard this before. I mean, how many times in the recent past have we heard about the world ending? I mean, I was alive for Y2K. I was young, but I was alive. Then there was 2012. And then there's even over the last couple years, I think it was September 2015, the world was supposed to end or something like that. 2008, it was the same thing, a biblical prophecy, and it never happened. And the dude said, oh, I did it wrong. It'll be, 3 months from now. 3 months passed, never happened. So I'm not really expecting much else from this. Because let's just remember, he's getting all his information for how the world's going to end from a 2,000-year-old book. So somehow this 2,000-year-old book, which was written by people, that has been established even by the church, that it is the word of God written through people. But somehow they knew that this exact day, September 23rd, 2017, was coming. I feel like if there was going to be a day that the world was going to end, it would have been June 6, 2006, because that would have literally been 666. That was another time I heard that the world was supposed to end, although I heard that around the school, so that could have just been children talk. So, is the world going to end on September 23rd? September 23rd was pinpointed using codes from the Bible and also a date marker shown by the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. Ooh! So he can't even get enough from his own religion. He has to go back to a previous one that hasn't been around for how many thousands of years now? Gotta be like close to 2 at least. But it's funny how every other time, all the religions, Christianity, will talk about how all the pagan religions are wrong. But how they were so wrong. One of their main go-to is how the difference between their version of God and the pagan version of God is that their version of God was inside the universal realm. They were somewhere on Earth or inside the universe, where this this God stands on the outside of the universe. So that makes him exactly right. So that's why Christianity is the proper religion and all these old religions are false. But we need to go back to these old religions to get the evidence we need to vindicate today's prophecy of end times. Makes perfect sense to me. Oh, what's this? But NASA has dismissed the claims assisting Planet X theory is merely a hoax. And I've, in my younger days, in my conspiracy days, not gonna lie, they're still there. Still got a little bit of conspiracy theory in me. But in my old days, I definitely looked into Planet X, Nibiru, and it was very interesting, but there's just not the evidence to substantiate it. Nobody has been able to actually present you with a real photo, although this guy who's presenting this this end time prophecy, David Mead, he seems very certain that they are around. He seems very certain that Planet X is real. But this is what's going to happen essentially is come September 23rd, Planet X, which this is an old conspiracy from Nibiru, about the Nibiru conspiracy, that it orbits on a very odd trajectory that takes it close to Earth every 12 or 13,000 years, if I remember correctly. And according to the theory, it will come so close to Earth that it will fuck up Earth's gravitational pull, just everything. When a planet comes that close to you, it will really fuck everything up, and it will be the end of the world. It's not going to collide with us, but it's going to pass so close that it's going to cause all these natural disasters to happen. Tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes, you name it. I don't know. I feel like if this was about to happen, NASA and every other, space agency in the world would be screaming about this, because we'd have to get ready for the end of the world. We'd actually have to get ready, because this would be unavoidable. If this planet was coming in, we can't stop it. We don't have the technology to push this planet away. The only thing people could do would be to prepare. So I highly doubt that this is going to happen on September 23rd. And I'm really skeptical whenever Christians really try and branch out into the more scientific field. He's only a numerologist, so don't mistake him for a scientist or anything like that, but they always make me nervous because they're willing to bend the science in order to fit their narrative. Scores of YouTube doom videos and evangelical websites point to an astrological constellation on September 23rd matching Revelations 12:1-2, which will signal the start of the rapture and the second coming of Christ. The passage 12:1-2 reads, quote, "And a great sign appears in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth." End quote. Conspiracy theorists claim the woman in question is Virgo, and on September 23rd, the sun and moon will be in Virgo, as will Jupiter, now being said to represent the Messiah. I feel like this might have to do because in pagan times, Jupiter was the king of the gods. Jupiter was Zeus, essentially. When the Romans came in and, yes, stole, plagiarized the Greek gods and just changed their names, Jupiter was their god. Their king god, that was Zeus. So this is probably why it's supposed to represent the Messiah, because it's Jupiter. Once again, we got to go back to a religion that's no longer relevant, even if it's around somewhat, just in order to justify a Christian end times prophecy. They're just mixing the two together, and then they're saying, hey, look at that. But every other time, they would never even consider Greco-Roman gods to be taken seriously. So why should I take their god seriously? Or their religion seriously? They're willing to dismiss the Greco-Roman gods unless it suits the narrative. As Hitch once said, one of his most famous quotes, That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And that's what we're doing right here. So as was stating, that the sun and the moon will be in Virgo with Jupiter, which is supposed to represent the Messiah. This happens every 12 years, but they claim because of another planetary alignment representing, quote unquote, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. It is an unprecedented event foretold in Scripture. I believe you. Before going into Virgo, the Sun will be in Leo at the same time as Mercury, Venus, and Mars are in Leo. One main purveyor of the theory is Christian conspiracy theorist David Meade, who has also predicted a mythological planetary system known as Planet X or Nibiru will appear in the sky on September 23rd. He claims it will then pass the Earth in October, causing the start of the rapture with huge volcanoes and volcanic eruptions due to its gravitational force. Okay, so we're supposed to see it on September 23rd, and then in October it's supposed to destroy us. Although, maybe you shouldn't make all your headlines saying the world's going to end on September 23rd then. That actually is a little anticlimactic to hear the world's going to end on September 23rd. Oh no, it's going to be in the next month, but this is when we're going to start seeing some stuff, but no, the world's not going to end. Is this considered a Christian truth? Because that's something we like to hear a lot of times. Christian truth. It's a truth to me. I've heard Bill O'Reilly say that a few times when he's debated with atheists. One was the head of the American Atheist Association. I think that's what they're called. Just American Atheists, I think. And the other one, I was actually with Richard Dawkins, and he pretty much talked about how it's my truth. It's like, it's your truth? I don't like that term, because truth is supposed to be an objective thing. It's something that we can all see as being, is it real, is it false, is it fact, or is fiction? So to say it's my truth doesn't add up for me, because at the same time, that's as bad. It's pretty much at that point being some sort of, if we can add it into the whole moral questions, like moral relativity, it would be truth relativity. The truth is relative to you. No, you can't be relative to you. Because one thing about this is not universal across Christianity. It seems to be mostly the evangelicals that are pointing to this. But a lot of the other sects, Roman Catholics, Protestants, they're not endorsing this end of the world, well, conspiracy theory. They're being smart about it. I don't think the Vatican has endorsed this. What we got to remember is we have hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites orbiting the planet at this moment. Some of them are meant to control stuff on Earth. Plenty of them are looking out into the stars. We have the Hubble telescope. We have plenty of planetary telescopes all over the world. We would be seeing if Nibiru is coming. And it wouldn't just appear out of nowhere. We would have been seeing it for a while. Of course, now we're hearing that NASA's been covering it up. NASA's been covering it up. Why would they want to cover that up? Well, you see, going back to the theory of Nibiru, Nibiru is not just our doomsday planet that's going to come in and end the world. No. Nibiru is also the home to our gods. See, in ancient Babylonian mythology, the Anunnaki live on Nibiru. And the Anunnaki are supposed to be large alien creatures that came down to Earth and showed humanity how, essentially, got humanity started, showed us how to create stuff. I suppose in some regards they probably would attribute the wheel to the Anunnaki and several other great technologies, or stuff like buildings, the way we build, they would attribute to the Anunnaki. Being able to build the pyramids, they would attribute to the Anunnaki from their teachings. So essentially, as the theory goes, they came down to Earth when we were, uncivilized, tribal, just in the worst condition. We weren't going anywhere as a society. And what they did is they set us up got us started in a civilized society, got us set up with all the knowledge we needed, such as agriculture, building, math, astrology, the basics, and then got human society going. This is the theory. So the reason they're covering it up is because they don't want us to know about the Anunnaki that are living on Nibiru. Sounds nutty, doesn't it? It's funny how, don't get me wrong, conspiracy theorists can come all across the board. They can be on the far left to the far right. But holy shit, it is the religious conspiracy theorists that are the craziest out there. They will believe anything. And I do believe that partly is related to their religion. I mean, how could it not be? They're being told unbelievable stories of humanity getting flooded and then restarted, of how we were created, about how we all descended from Adam and Eve, and this and that and the other. It seems like they'd be then it'd be very easy to accept a crazy conspiracy theory such as this. So some are making the comparison to the Revelations quote, but the main one that this guy David Meade was really looking at when he was making up this doomsday prophecy was the quote from Luke 21, and it's verse 25 to 26. And so this guy, David Meade, claims that the Bible's numbers match with August 21st, which is the date of the solar eclipse, and the day that Trump nearly went blind. August 25th, when Hurricane Harvey hit, and August 26th, when it flooded Houston, Texas. So, if you look at the numbers, 21st of August, 25th of August, 26th of August. Luke 21, 25, 26. Ooh. Because there was nothing related to Luke when that came up. Now, in stories with Luke, yes, it has the doomsday prophecies. But aside for all that these quotes say, it doesn't actually even add up that much. These quotes are still so vague to what's happening today that it could be very easy at almost any time to take this Luke 21, 25 through 26 at just about any point in history. I mean, here, verse 25, quote, "There will be the signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken." And then verse 26, "Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken." Okay, the roaring and tossing of the seas. Well, yeah, don't get me wrong. We had some terrible fucking hurricanes, but there's been plenty of times we've had terrible hurricanes that could be seen this way. We had Hurricane Sandy a few years ago. I think it was 2004. There was that giant-ass tsunami which killed something like, 250,000 people? I hope I'm not way off on that number. So here are other times when it was roaring, tossing seas. And if you think about it, that would have only been about 13 years ago now, so that would have been almost in correlation with the sun and the moon moving into Virgo. Hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven will be shaken. So I think in this term, the whole powers of heaven is, the stars, the planets, which if Nibiru is coming, you'd be like, oh. But this is just ridiculous because these are so damn vague. He says there will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. That doesn't say anything. What are these signs? These signs could be anything. I mean, how do we know that when they're talking about the sun and moon and stars, they're just not talking about not a solar eclipse, a supernova, Well, fuck, we'd see it all across the stars, all across the moon and sun, because we just have this big fucking wave coming towards us. We'd have about 8 minutes to watch it come at us, and then it would destroy us. This could be taken in so many different ways. Nations in anguish. Are you telling me that you would take now as a nation in anguish over what happened in World War II? Really? Because we had an entire continent destroyed by war. So this seems like this would be more to do with the terror in people's hearts and the anguish that they feel. And their... Okay, we're moving on. I can't anymore. So I also stated earlier, this guy, David Mead, made reference to the Pyramid of Giza he's using to back up his claims. So he believed that the pyramids of Giza in Egypt give the same September date. Said it would pass at around 4 million miles from Earth, but even at the distance, the magnetic force on the planet Earth would spark tsunamis, polar shifts, and global devastation. The September 23rd date came from codes in the Bible and also a date marker shown in the Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Mead says that he has discovered 2 tunnels set at precise angles in the Great Pyramid that will point to significant celestial objects after September 20th. And the Great Pyramids are lined up with the Belt of Orion. What are you getting at? The myth was born in 1976 when writer Zecharia Sitchin claimed 2 ancient Middle Eastern cultures, the Babylonians and Sumerians, told of a giant planet believed by conspiracy theorists to be Nibiru that orbited the sun every 3,600 years. Okay, 3,600, not 13,000. But that number still doesn't add up. See, I think for them it works out perfectly for the Christians, because if you believe the world is 6,000 years old, I believe if we went back in time about 3,600 years, going by Christian history, that would actually be something around the time of the Great Flood, I believe. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I'm pretty sure my dates add up. So this would work out perfectly for them. Not only would it almost confirm that the world is 6,000 years old, but also it would show the great devastation, and that they could then point and say, this is God. This is God's act. See, there is a God. But they're going through a sci-fi writer, and the other thing they're not mentioning about the Babylonians and Sumerians is translating their text is insanely difficult. Insanely difficult. There's only a small fraction of those texts that have been translated. So to get this whole history of the Earth, of planet Nibiru and the Anunnaki from the Sumerian and Babylonian texts, there's not enough there to actually justify that. But look at me once again. I'm complaining about religious people not justifying their beliefs. So sorry, I should just bang my head against the wall. However, have no fear, because no scientists agree with him. But hey, when has that stopped a good conspiracy theorist? Very true. Mead, though, is doubling down on his assertion and claim on Conspiracy Theory radio show that he has spoken to a professor on astronomy in Paris who told him that Nibiru is real. Mead said, quote, I asked, is it real? And he said, oh yes. Mead said, I've seen it, and he told me that the name of the observatory he had seen it at, and he said he had a secret film of it, which he later sent to me. He had taken it with his phone, and it is an actual photo of the system. He got out of the observatory at a very high level, and he has shared it with me since. I have not shared it with the public, but I have seen it. Another reason David Mead is so certain that Death Planet Nibiru is going to kill us all is that he claims it's written in both the Bible and the pyramids. Mead said, quote, it is very strange indeed that both the great sign of Revelation 12 and the Great Pyramid of Giza both point us to one precise moment in time. September 20 to 23rd, 2017. Is this the end of the church age and the transition to the day of the Lord? There couldn't be two greater witnesses. I'm really starting to wonder if any science talk actually would even be worth it. Like, to try and actually reason with someone like David Meade through scientific means seems impossible. What I find funny too about him using ancient Egyptian theology mixed with Christian theology is that the two, at least, really have nothing to do with each other. They're completely different religions. Now, I put this in quotation marks because Christianity has stolen from religions all over the world. This also includes ancient Egyptians. I'm sure by now most people know the story of Ra, which is pretty much identical to the story of Jesus with a few details changed. And it also came at least 500 years before Jesus, the story of Jesus came. It might maybe even more, actually. But that would be like me as, quote, scientist, not really even close, but let's just say I was. That would be make me completely disregarding some other scientist as pseudoscientist and then trying to quote him to make my point. Because this is what you're doing. You'll completely disregard ancient Egyptian religion as being untrue. It's absolutely not. Their gods are not true, but ours are true. Oh, what's this? Something they believed in matches up with us? Well, okay, fine. That part is true, apparently. So which one is it? Is it real or not real? Is it true or not true? This is my whole problem with religious truth. It seems subjective to me. Oh, it matches our narrative? Fine, no problem. We'll preach it. We'll preach it like the gospel. In fact, that's what they always want to do. Whenever there's been a discovery, they want to force people to believe it. This has been shown before in the past when it was actually the theory of, I believe it had to do with the sun moving around the earth. The old theory that the sun moved, the earth stays still, when it turned out quite the opposite. That was actually discovered by a religious man. He was a member of the church. And when he happened to mention this to the Pope pretty much said, well, do you want me to preach it as gospel so everybody has to believe it? Well, granted, that turned out that's true. Like, it was true. But you're going to preach it like gospel and make everybody believe it? Has there ever been a more subjugating thing you could say to make people believe it? That's almost on the lines of brainwashing, in my opinion. And whenever I hear something like that, it just brings me back to an old great quote by one of the old popes from like medieval times, where he said, "It has served us well, this myth of Christianity." Hold on. Oh, here we go. This book on Christianity right here, which is How the Church Has Exploited the Myth of Christ. And on the back, the quote is, "It has served us well, this myth of Christ, by Pope Leo X, 1513 to 1521. So, of course, once this started getting out, everybody on Twitter, well, just about everybody, was just making fun of this to all hell. People saying they don't need to pay their rent anymore, don't have to pay their bills, they can do whatever they want, obviously joking. And then you got the few crazies out there that are actually doubling down on this, believing that the end of the world is coming in less than a week. They're probably already have, nailed up wooden beams across their windows and probably bought 1,000 locks for their doors and 6 guns for themselves by now, getting ready for the second coming of Jesus, where millions of people will be killed off. That's right, millions of people will die in this bloody war, final conquest between Christ and Satan, where all the believers will ascend to heaven and all the rest of us will be left here to deal with it. Thanks. And I've just got one more quick story for you guys. This also contains of the religious kind. And what it is a priest was disinvited from a university seminar after attacks over a book about building a bridge to LGBT communities. Reverend James Martin, who was planning to speak about Jesus and not about LGBT-related issues, has become the target of attacks from right-wing sites. That's right. Right-wing sites and Christian conservatives, the main people that have been bitching these days about free speech and how the left wants to suppress free speech, turned against one of their own because he did not toe the line. Just proves how conservatives really don't care about free speech. They just want you, like the left, to toe the line. I find there's more individuals on the right that are willing to be like, well, fuck no, I'm not going to toe the line just because you tell me, than there are on the left. But really, in the end, it's all tribalism. Follow what we tell you to or get the fuck out. So Reverend James Martin, a popular priest who has published a book earlier this year encouraging a bridge between the LGBT community and Catholic Church, has been disinvited from giving an address to Catholic University seminar. Martin, who is planning to speak about Jesus and not about LGBT-related issues, has become target of attacks from right-wing sites since his book, Building a Bridge, was published in June. In a statement, the University Seminar Theological College said that it had received negative feedback on social media sites and that its rector, Reverend Gerald McBrearty, made the decision to rescind Martin's invitation to speak in October. Quote, in no way does this decision signal approval or agreement with the comments or accusations that the various social media sites have made over the recent weeks, end quote. And this is why I always have a problem whenever I hear that religion, more specifically Christianity, encourages freedom of speech. When you have blasphemy laws that are meant to repress people who speak out against you, and you have now proven you are prepared to go to the same extent that the radical left will go in order to shut people down you don't agree with. Because this is coming from their own side. This isn't like this was an atheist speaker. It's not like it was Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris that tried to walk on this and a bunch of Christian conservatives told them to go fuck themselves. This was a priest. And he got disinvited simply because he doesn't toe the line. Thanks, but I think I'll stick with my free thinkers. Because the free thinkers generally don't get caught up too much inside crazy political nonsense and stuff. The free thinkers are the ones that sit back and watch this and say, what is this telling me? I find that good atheists do this. They're not so concerned. Of course, we all play politics. It's natural. But a free thinker, what is a good atheist is supposed to be, is willing to admit when they're wrong, willing to update their evidence, willing to update their opinion. I just don't find I get this from the religious side very much. I'm going to leave you with one more thing. A few years ago, Bill Nye debated Ken Ham at the Creationist Museum, and one of the last questions they were asked is, "What do you need to convince you of the other's argument?" Bill Nye said, "Evidence. Give me evidence, and I'll admit I'm wrong, and blah blah blah." Ken Ham, nothing. No matter what amount of evidence you give him, he would never stop believing in God. You could give him 100% proof, and he wouldn't. This is why I don't find religious people are generally free thinkers. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion. I'll see you soon.